Welcome to Genetics 10, Introduction to Crossbreeding and Rotational Systems. Before we get into crossbreeding, there's just one definition we need to describe here. Outcrossing is just mating individuals within a breed that are less related than average. And usually if we're pure breeding individuals within the same breed, we're trying to avoid inbreeding. So animals less related than average, we may go to extremes to find almost totally unrelated individuals within a breed to mate them. That would be known as outcrossing. Crossbreeding is when we're mating individuals within different breeds. So we're crossing two different breeds here. And there's a couple reasons we may do that. The most important reason is to take advantage of heterosis. Heterosis is the difference between the crossbred average compared to the average of our two parental breeds. And heterosis is the opposite of inbreeding depression. We talked about earlier in the inbreeding section is that when we mate related individuals, we may get inbreeding depression. If you crossbreed, you erase all that inbreeding depression. So usually there's an advantage for crossbreeding, especially in the fertility and health areas. By crossbreeding, we may also be able to use breeds in a complementary fashion. So we kind of try to match up the weaknesses of one breed with the strengths in another. And especially if we have a fixed cross system, we may have some breeds that make extremely good mothers, and we can use those as mothers, while other breeds may perform the best in the feedlot, so we can use those breeds as terminal sires. So two reasons here to strongly consider crossbreeding. And as we look across our different, especially food animal species, in chickens and in swine, sheep, beef cattle, we tend to do a lot of crossbreeding to take advantages of heterosis. The amount of heterosis will vary, as I said, between 4 different traits. So a lot of times we want to measure the heterosis to help us predict how the crossbreds may do. So heterosis, the amount of heterosis is the average of the crossbreds minus the average of the parental breeds. And a lot of times we do have advantages for the crossbreds. We do get heterosis. That heterosis may vary between almost none to maybe an advantage of 25%. So the percent heterosis then equals the amount of heterosis divided by the average of the parental breeds times 100. And we'll show some examples here to illustrate. So the example that we're using here is pretty real data. Holsteins, they're the best for pounds of milk. Jerseys give fewer pounds of milk, but the Jerseys have advantages in other areas. Well, for this particular trait that we're looking at, we're just interested in pounds of milk for now. So we do the crossing and we find out that the crossbreds average, in this case, 22,300 pounds of milk. So more than the Jerseys, but less than the Holsteins. That crossbred average will abbreviate that as CA, crossbred average. The parental breeds average 21,000. So this 21,000 is just the average of the Holsteins and the Jerseys. The amount of heterosis is the crossbred average minus the parent average. So here we do the math. Crossbred average minus parent average. 22,300 minus 21,000 is 1,300 pounds of milk. And as I say, a lot of times we want to express that as how much, what is the percent heterosis. So here we have the percent heterosis, the 1,300 divided by the parental average, or the average between the Holsteins and the Jerseys. Then we times it by 100 to just get in percent. So for milk production, and there have been a lot of studies on this, usually the heterosis for milk production is going to range right between 5 to 7%, and that's what we got here. So we're going to go through another example, changing species in this case. So we've got black labs and golden retrievers, two of the more popular dog breeds, and we've got them on a training regimen. And the black labs, I guess for our black labs, they average 6.2 on a 10-point scale. The golden retriever is 6.8, so at least for the strain of dogs that we have here in our program, the golden labs are a little better. Well, we may want to crossbreed our dogs, and on average crossbred dogs tend to be a little healthier. I wouldn't expect much difference on trainability. And so we find that in our situation, the crossbreds, crossbred average is 6.6, which is close to the average of our two breeds that we started with. So what is the heterosis for trainability score? It looks like we have a small amount, but not a lot. So the crossbred average is 6.6, parent average 6.5. So the amount heterosis then is 6.6 minus 6.5. We have a plus 0.1 on a 1 to 10 scale, so very little there. We can look at it as what percent heterosis did we get. So the percent heterosis then is 0.1 divided by the parental average times 100, 1.5%. So 1.5% is not very much. So we're not going to make this cross because of the advantage in trainability. Instead, we might make this cross because of the advantage of overall health of the animals rather than trainability. Very little heterosis expected for trainability. We have one more quick little example here, looking at a totally different trait and a different species. So we're looking at, we got quarter horses, and they can be live to be 30, but on average probably productive life, where you can use them for work, about 22 years. Arabians tend to be a little longer lived on average, so 23 years. We're going to make the crossbreds and find out that hey, the cross are productive until 25 years, so we definitely have some heterosis here and a fair percentage of heterosis. So you might just hit the pause button now and calculate the percent heterosis for longevity of productive life in horses. So here's our calculations. The amount of heterosis is 2.5, since the crossbreds averaged 25 years, while the average of our parental breeds, the average of 22 and 23, is 22.5, so there's the average of the parental breeds. So 2.5 divided by 22.5 times 100, we got 11% heterosis for productive life of horses, and I guess that is about what we might expect. Crossbred should remain viable just a little longer than purebreds. For the next few slides, we'll have estimates of heterosis from different studies done by different species and different traits. So heterosis will vary quite a bit. We tend to get a lot of heterosis for reproductive traits in swine. So monoheterosis for litter size born, about 8%, or 1 extra pig per litter. But then when we look at litter size weaned, it's 24%, which is a lot. So you get more pigs born, more pigs survive, and they tend to be heavier. So litter size weaned, tremendous advantage. If you're raising pigs to supply the consumer with pork, you need to be crossbreeding. Okay, after weaning, then heterosis tends to get smaller. Daily gain after weaning, so how fast the pigs grow from, let's say, 20 pounds to 280 pounds. Oh, we got a 7% heterosis. Feed efficiency, generally no advantage, and we generally see very little advantage, although depending upon species, estimates are out there from 0% up to maybe 5% from different studies. Muscling in the carcass, 1% really isn't all that much different than 0. We crossbred pigs really to get the advantage in number of pigs that we're going to sell per sow bred. Okay, when you just look at beef cattle, and as I say, there have been a lot of studies done over the years. And again, just like in pigs, we see most of the advantage in the fertility and maybe survivability of the young. So this is weight of calf weaned per cow bred. So so there's going to be heterosis for fertility of the cow. There's going to be heterosis as far as viability of that calf. And then there's heterosis for that calf to gain a lot and for the cow to milk more as well. So 18%, that's a pretty big advantage. Rate of gain after weaning, well, that's only 4%, not real big. And then for carcass traits, feed efficiency, again, we don't see very much heterosis or advantage for crossbreeding for those traits. For dairy production, less crossbreeding is done in dairy than other species. Maybe today in the United States, about 10% of dairy cows are crossbred, and that number has actually been on a slightly upward trend over the years. Milk production, the main trait in dairy cattle, it's at 6%, so it's not huge like we get in litter size for swine or pounds of calf per cow bred in beef cattle. Calf mortality and reproductive traits, it's generally there in dairy cattle. Different studies have shown some pretty big ranges in those traits as far as amount of heterosis. But if you look at other traits in dairy cattle as well, as far as longevity in the herd, there's advantages for crossbreeding. So overall, you would expect heterosis for profitability in dairy cattle. All right, now we just want to talk about rotational crossbreeding systems. On the next video, we'll talk about other types of crossing systems, but when crossbreeding began in our livestock back 70, 80 years ago, rotational systems were by far the most common. So rotational systems, what are we doing here? The replacement females come from our own herd. So we're going to be raising animals. We select the best females for the next generation, and then we get a breed of boar that's unrelated to the previous males in our generation here. And we always use purebred males. Generally that's the case. We use them in a alternating fashion. So we'll illustrate that with 2, 3, and 4 breed rotational crosses. So first, a 2-breed rotation is also known as a crisscross system. For our illustration, here we're going to be talking about pigs, but the same would hold for any species. So notice on this is the boar on top here. We have the gilts down below. So we've got 2 breeds of boars here, and every other generation we're switching back to the original breed. So 2-breed rotation, we're rotating the males. So we're starting off with a Yorkshire gilt, and then we're going to breed her to a Hampshire boar. So we're going to make this mating, and then we're going to have a bunch of offspring here. So hopefully our litter size is going to average at least 10 pigs, I guess. And a lot of pigs will go to market, but we'll also pick replacement females from this group. And the 2 parents are unrelated, so we're going to get all the available heterosis for the traits in this cross. In the initial crosses, we usually refer to those initial crosses as F1s. So we got a F1 bunch of market animals and also F1 gilts for the next generation. So first we have the Hampshire boar, and then we're going to get ourselves a Yorkshire boar. Now we can purchase semen, or we can just get live animals here. And for our gilts now, we're going to pick from the previous generation. So we've got a lot of gilts there, hopefully from this cross, and we can pick the best ones for the next generation. Now this gilt is going to be 1/2 Hamp, 1/2 York, because that's coming from these parents. So one problem with the 2-breed rotation is our boar is somewhat related to the gilt now, because the gilt is 1/2 York. So we make that mating, and here's our offspring. Offspring's going to be 1/4 Hamp, because we kind of deleted out the Hamp when we bred this gilt that was 1/2 Hamp back to a purebred York boar. So now we're only 1/4 Hamp. We're 3/4 Yorkshire in this gilt. And we're not going to have all the available heterosis since our 2 parents are somewhat related here. So this gilt in this generation now, or the gilt or the market animals as well, are only going to have 50% of the available heterosis, because we had a York parent boar here, and we had 1/2 York here. So you match up these genetics, and there's not going to be any heterosis with that common York in common. But we will still get some heterosis, 50% of that is available. So then we'll get, so we've got this gilt that's 1/4 Hamp, 3/4 Yorkshire. We'll breed her to a New Hampshire boar. And our offspring then is going to be 5/8 Hamp, 3/8 Yorkshire. And we're not going to get all the heterosis because we've got 100% Hamp boar here. and it's going to be matched with 1/4 Hampshire genes in this gill, so we're going to lose that 25%. But we still get 75% of the available heterosis, which is pretty good. So as we start a two-breed rotational crossing system, the percent available heterosis is going to kind of jump around a little. So we started out with 2 purebreds, and then we had the offspring here that were 100% available heterosis, then 50%, then 75%, and then it's going to kind of vary up and down a little bit. But as we go along in the crossbreeding system, like I say, it bounces around a lot at first, but after you get in 5 or 6 generation, it's going to be hovering right around that 67% of the maximum heterosis. Now this is a 2-breed rotation, and the if you get 2 breeds within your species that you believe are the best, and if you go to a 3rd breed, you'd be pretty inferior. Then you might want to just stay with 2 breeds. But 2-breed rotations are not utilized all that much today because you're giving up 1/3 of the available heterosis. So today, a 3-breed rotation is most widely utilized if people go to a rotational crossing system. And obviously the advantage of a 3-breed rotation is that you're getting 86% of the maximum heterosis, while in a 2-breed rotation you only got 67% of the maximum heterosis. If you go back 40, 50 years ago in the swine industry, this was the most common crossing system that was used. People get a Hampshire boar, then a Landrace boar, then a Yorkshire boar, and just keep rotating around. Today in the swine industry, most people have gone to a 3-breed fixed crossing system, which we'll talk about in the next video. Today in dairy cattle, for people that are using rotational crossing, and we said about 10% of dairy cattle are crossbred, they're probably using a 3-breed rotation in dairy cattle. One of the breeds in that 3-breed rotation is probably going to be Holstein. And after that, there are a lot of different breeds that people can use, including Jersey and Brown Swiss, Scandinavian Red, the Montbéliard breed from France, all kind of common breeds used in a rotational system. Now, a 4-breed rotation is going to look like this. Because you're coming back to that same breed only every 4th generation. You really have almost 100% heterosis. It's 94%, so that's the advantage of a 4-breed rotation. I'm illustrating here with cats only because I really do not know of an example where people use a 4-breed rotation. So advantage would be picking up a slight advantage over a 3-breed rotation, but you've got to worry about a 4th additional breed. Anyway, this is what the 4-breed rotation might look like, and that kind of concludes this video on introduction to crossbreeding and rotational systems.